And I'm here with Rick Jorgensen, the owner, one of the owners of the Brockamour, which is an exceptionally historical place, rich in history and rich in ghosts. Tell us more about it, Rick.
Well, Brockamour was built in 1809. It traces its roots to the Revolutionary War, the War of Independence, depending on if you're on the American side or the British side. And it does that through the family as well as the land. The land was originally owned by the Mohawk Indian chief Joseph Brant, who was granted the land that the house is built on as part of the land they received to replace what was lost in the Revolutionary War. And he wanted a plot of land here in Niagara-on-the-Lake, which was called Newark then, because that was the first seat of government, and he wanted to be close to government. As well, the father-in-law of Captain John Powell, who built the home, was a gentleman by the name of Aeneas Shaw, who fought again in the Revolutionary War alongside Lord Simcoe. And when Simcoe was sent out here to resettle and organize Canada after the border was drawn, he sent for Shaw to come and join him and help him. And Shaw had moved with the Empire Loyalists up to New Brunswick, and so he marched out here in 15 days with a new born and his family. So it was quite a feat, and Simcoe, as history records, laughed his head off that he could make it out here that quickly, and so he appointed him to the Executive Council of Upper Canada, and so he became a prestigious citizen of Canada.
So I guess, Rick, you're going to take us on a tour through the Brockamour, and I guess we're going to learn about more history of it, some of the kind of entertaining rooms that surround ghosts, and also you're going to share a pretty cool story about a potential buried treasure on the place.
Okay, let's get started then.
Let's get going. Okay, we're standing, I'm going to assume, Rick, this is the dining room, and I'm going to guess there's some significance since you brought us to the dining room. What is the story with the dining room?
Well, this was one of the main rooms when the home was built. It would have been the great room off of the hallway, but the home was renovated in 1839 and basically doubled the size of the house. The original house was built out of brick and stone, and would have been a 4-bedroom Georgian-style home at that point in history. The brick and stone served it well in the War of 1812 when the whole town was burned to the ground. This home didn't burn to the ground because it was built out of stone. So the walls from that era still survived. There was some damage to the interior, and of course the roof was destroyed. But it remained standing, so it's one of the only buildings in the area that did remain standing after the War of 1812. That was significant as well because the construction of the home made it a bit of a stronghold. People in the town, when it was occupied during the War of 1812, as history records, they stored the valuables in the basement of this home, and it was guarded by a staff sergeant at that particular time, who subsequently was killed in the war. That's one of the ghost stories that seems to be lingering around in terms of that particular individual. It was told to me by one of the previous owners of the property, who had come over for a gathering to have a party, levy after a significant date, and they were sitting around talking about the stories of the war and so on. And the light, this chandelier, continued to flicker from the time that the owner had purchased the property, and he had tried rewiring and he had tried many different things, but nothing changed. The light continued to flicker. So he was telling this individual who was in the militia and was a commanding officer in the militia about the story, that it was linked to the staff sergeant, and he couldn't get the light to stop. And the fellow said, "Hey, I can fix that." So he stood up and said, "You know, I'm your commanding officer. I command you to stop doing what you're doing." And the light went steady after that and has worked perfectly ever since then. So I don't know if there's rhyme or reason to that happening, but that's the story that was related to us, as well as a number of different occurrences that happened to that particular family that owned the home over the course of the time that they stayed here.
What does Brockamour mean? As obviously Brock's name is part of it.
Well, it comes from the story of Brock and Sophia. Amour is the French word for love, and Brock, obviously, Sir Isaac Brock. So Brockamour is love of Brock. And that's linked to the story, again, of Sophia and Brock, where the folklore says that he stopped here and was having tea when the Battle of Queenston Heights broke out. And he went from here to the battle and was subsequently killed in the first battle of Queenston Heights. And that was the last time that she saw him alive. She stayed single her whole life, which is a historically recorded fact. She lived to be quite elderly into her 80s, and so she was in her 20s when she met Brock. So she stayed single her whole life, and as the story goes, her spirit came back to this home. Many guests have claimed to have seen her because of her love of Brock.
What is the most recent story that you've had visitors seeing the ghost?
We had just a few months ago, actually, a young couple was here playing billiards in the parlor, and they saw a woman dressed in older century clothing, earlier century clothing, come through this room, and they thought that she was a guest and came to say hello, but nobody was here. So he was quite taken aback because he wasn't a believer, if you will, in those kinds of stories, but his wife was, and but he's the one that saw her, and adamantly claims that it was real, and they wanted to know if there was a ghost in the home. They came and asked us afterwards. So the next day they were telling us the story.
Okay, we're standing in the pool room, where in most cases a lot of fun action stuff happens in pool rooms.
Yeah.
In fact, this was the room that the gentleman had seen the ghost through the doorway. But you have another story for us involving this light switch.
Yeah, it's kind of a funny story, I guess. Funny if you like that kind of a story, but it involves my wife. I was away on a trip, and she came in at night to turn off the lights as the house, as we call it. We were putting the house to bed, and she tried to turn off this light switch. And when she turned it off, the lights actually got brighter and stayed on. So she thought there was an electrical issue, and so she tried. I was away for 3 or 4 days, so she tried over the course of that time to turn it off a number of times, and it wouldn't go out. She told me about it, so when I returned home, I was going to fix it. But I thought, well, before I fix it and tear it all apart, I'll try it. So I came in and flicked off the switch, and that was 5 years ago, and it's worked well ever since I turned it off. So she claims that it was Sophia, making sure that she was safe and knowing that somebody else was around in the house. And there's been a number of occurrences with Sophia and my wife where Sophia has played tricks on her, and music will come on when she comes into a room, or the lights will come on when she goes into a room, and she hasn't really touched anything. So it's an interesting. She's not a frightening ghost. She's just a mischievous ghost, so well suited to the parlor.
They say that kids are really perceptive to ghost, apparition, and spirits. And it seems that at the Brockamour in the 1940s, a little boy had an experience with a ghost. Rick, want to share it with us?
Sure, we have a letter from a young boy that grew up here during that period of time that swears on the staircase every day he would see a woman dressed in white and at the top of the stairs. And this one day, she was beckoning to him to follow her. And so he went up the stairs, and as he wrote in the letter, he got up to the top of the stairs, and the wall opened, and she went into the wall and turned around and beckoned for him to come. And he started to step forward into the wall, and something hit him really hard on the back of the head. He fell to the floor, and he was so scared he ran all the way back down and then hid underneath here, underneath the staircase in this little closet area that is underneath the stairs. And that was the last time. That was the last time that he saw her. And after that day, he never saw her again. But up until that day, he saw her every day at the top of the stairs. So he wrote a letter to us and outlined the story.
Perfect. So now you're going to take us upstairs and show us some of the, not only the wall that closed on the child, but also some of the hauntings that people have reported seeing upstairs.
Yes, I will. I'll take you up there now.
Okay, we're on the upper landing of the Brockamour, where a lot of cool stuff has happened, supposedly, where people have seen stuff move, seen stuff close, and seen apparitions. What is the significance of this, Rick?
Well, this armoire, when we first took over Brockamour, this is where we store a lot of our linens for the bedrooms, and you can see it opens and closes quite easily. For the first, I would say, 2 years, we couldn't open it easily. Every time we tried to open it, it was stuck. We couldn't get it open until we said, Sophia, quit it. We need to get to work here. And then it would open up as easily as I just showed you. So that went on for 2 years. It hasn't happened in the last few years, but in the beginning, I think it was Sophia letting us know that she was around and that we should pay some attention to her.
What is the significance of this?
This was one of the previous owners' idea of a joke in terms of a replication of Sophia. So she's been with us since we took over now almost 7 years ago. And she is a great item of fun for our guests. We've had guests that have put it outside another guest's door and knocked on the door and used it to scare the guests. But that's what the significance is. It's just a replication of Sophie.
Okay, so Rick, this is the place where you said you had some ladies coming and visit you a while back, and they detected the presence of orbs, ghosts.
This is the top of the inn, so to speak. And we had a group of ladies that wanted to actually come and visit Brockamour because they had heard that there was a ghost here. And so they booked this room for the weekend, and were quite disappointed that they didn't see a ghost. But they'd been taking pictures over the course of the weekend as they were, just snacking, drinking wine, and so on. And when they got home and looked at the pictures, there was an orb over the shoulder in every picture that they took in this room. And there's nothing in this room that would reflect. All of the pictures were taken over the bed, and there's nothing that would reflect light. So they were a little excited about that because they realized that really there was something here with them, and they were very, very excited and sent us the pictures as proof that they weren't just making stories up.
Okay, another story that you've got, and I guess kind of like the evidence, is the butt print left in the bed.
Well, yeah, that's true. We had a staff person that when we first took over, there was a manager here that her niece was helping her with the running of the inn, and she told us kind of a few days into, as we got to know each other, a few days into it, she asked us our opinion of ghosts and whether we believed or didn't believe, and so we said, well, we're not sure. We've never had any experiences. Little did we know how many we would get after that. But she told us the story of her niece in this room. She stayed here while she was helping, and one night when she was sleeping, she felt someone sit on her bed, and actually saw, because she woke up in surprise, and actually saw the bed then rise again as the person got up. So she wasn't very excited about that, so that was the last time that she spent the night in this room.
Sounds to me like that Isaac Brock was one hell of a ladies' man, eh?
Well, there is some rumor to that effect.
So he's carrying it on into the next
Yeah,
life, into the
there
present.
you go.
Some old habits never die, eh?
Yeah, I'm not sure that Sophia would be happy about that. But,
So maybe that's why Sophia likes you. This is a
there you go.
jealousy thing.
There you go.
Okay, Rick, well, thank you so much for having us, for sharing the history of the Brockamour, for sharing the ghost stories, for showing us that love is eternal between Brock and Sophia, and also for sharing your treasure story. It's been a pleasure.
Oh, well, it was my pleasure to have you, and I hope your viewers enjoy seeing the show and hearing about the stories and the life after.
Most definitely they will.